Okay. Well, now the moment you've all been waiting for, the LegalCORPS players. We're going to do our first mock interview session. So we got the two of you over here. And this. Fantastic. Great.
Well, welcome. I'm John Farnsworth.
Oh, John.
Very
Hi.
nice to meet you.
I'm Justina Roberts.
Justina.
Nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you. I'm Morris Nightingale, as you've seen on my client data sheet.
Well, thank you very much. And just for the purposes of the audience, the client intake sheet is in the booklet, so feel welcome to follow along on that. What are your goals today? First of all, I should say welcome to the LegalCORPS Brief Advice Clinic.
Thank you.
How can we help you today? What are your goals?
Well, thanks for coming. I'm a little bit nervous. I've really never met with business lawyers before, but you both look really nice. Well, I have a lot of questions. My brother, Boris Nightingale, is an accountant, and so he's been giving me some advice on starting a business. I've also been talking to the score counselor out front, and the score counselor is great, but there's some areas that she won't talk to me about. I said, should my business be in corporation? I've heard about S corporations. Should it be an LLC? And she says, oh, that's legal advice. So you're going to have to talk to the lawyers. But we have these great volunteer lawyers who come in. So thanks. So I have some questions about how to organize the business, and also tell me if the name is okay. And I have one or two other questions.
Great. Well, this is a very exciting time for you, obviously. Starting a new business is an exciting adventure. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you're hoping to do with your business?
Sure. It's a home health care business. My training is as a social worker, and I love, giving people advice, helping them on health care matters, on other matters that come up in their families. So I've got some nursing training too, but I worked for a nonprofit for years that provided these home health care services. Both I could do some through my training, but also bring some in for immigrant communities. And it was a very satisfying career for 20 years. And now the nonprofit ran out of funding, and the program's been discontinued. So I'm out of work from that. And I figured I have these, I want to provide these services for the community. So I'd like to start my own business.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that you're out of work, but at the same time, it sounds like you've got a great idea for business, not only how to go into business, but also how to help people. And so between Justina and I, hopefully we'll be able to give you some feedback and some advice on how to get your business up and running. But first, are you going to be the only owner of the company?
As far as I know, I will be the only owner. I can't see having any other owners.
Are you expecting anyone to be supplying money or lending money to your company that might possibly want to be an owner of the company?
I don't know. I don't think it's going to take very much money to start this up. I'm not going to do a lot of advertising. I've got a lot of good contacts. So I just don't know of anything right now.
Do you expect in the future that you might bring in a business partner or anything like that?
It's possible. It's possible. I mean, I really, if this thing, becomes successful, then there are, various people I know who also would either, provided these services, who might want to be partners.
Well, as you can see here on the chart, there are several different entities which we can analyze that might be good for your company. Based on what you're telling me, I think the best entity right now might be the LLC. However, we can also discuss an S corporation as an alternative. Ultimately, no matter which you choose, both are going to be able to give you that personal liability protection. So if you ever have anyone who files a lawsuit against your company, knock on wood, it never happens.
Yeah, really. More lawyers.
Yeah, again, hopefully it'll never happen. But if it did, they can only go after the assets of your company, not your personal assets. The one benefit an LLC is going to have over an S corp is that if you ever want to bring on an owner in the future that, say, is willing to put money into the company and wants to own a part of the company rather than being treated as a lender or a creditor, that you can assign a different percentage of profits to them than what their ownership may be. So they could come in as a 50% owner, but you may only assign 10% of the profits to them because you're still doing all the work. Under an S corp, you can't do that. But one of the benefits of an S corp is that if you have money that is coming into your company, that you can pay yourself a salary and you can save potentially on some payroll taxes. It gets confusing. I'm not a CPA. I'm not a tax attorney.
But luckily, my brother Boris is so good.
You've got that going for you. So that possibly is an option too. And there's some other restrictions with an S corp that could make things a little bit more difficult. But ultimately, an LLC is going to do everything that you need it to do. The only downside that I see to it is that you may not have that same tax benefit that an S corp could provide. So if that's a really big deal, we could explore that issue further. But it's probably a conversation you're going to want to have with your brother.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I'm lucky to have that advice too. Well, that's great. So, but an LLC is going to protect me from liability, you said?
That's the first step. So it's actually a pretty easy process. You can go online to the Minnesota Secretary of State's website. They actually have a form right on there called Articles of Organization. You fill it out, and you can even file electronically now. Wow. And while the office is backed up a little bit, it's about a 2-month delay right now, you will eventually get back an original certificate saying, ta-da, you're organized, you're officially an LLC. From there, there's other things you're going to want to do. Open a bank account, obtain a federal tax ID number, and depending if you are going to have sales tax paid and take in sales tax, you may need a state tax ID number. And again, I'm not familiar enough with tax laws to know that. There's a really great number that you can call with the Minnesota Department of Revenue, and they can help you through that.
Department of Revenue. Okay, I'll write that down. Good.
Last, there may just be a few other documents which you may want to consider, including some bylaws or a member control agreement. But that's possibly something you don't have to figure out right this minute. It's even something your brother, being a CPA, may even be able to help you with some of those items.
Okay, well that's great.
But I understand you had some questions.
Yeah, what about the name? What about I thought, okay, I'll call it Acme Home Health Care. Is that a good name?
That's a great name. Have you looked on Minnesota Secretary of State's website yet to see if it's available or?
So, no, I haven't done that. So if it's available for Minnesota, then I don't have to worry about anything? I'm home free?
No, not necessarily. You may still be infringing on someone's trademark, so it's important also to look at the USPTO website and also just do a general Google search of that name to see if anyone in the area is using a similar name.
Okay.
And also, have you thought about maybe trademarking a logo or anything for your company yet? And it also impacts whether you're only doing business in Minnesota or nationally, so these are things to think about, and there's different costs and benefits to registering federally or within the state as well.
So if I do a logo, I need to worry about that separately?
Yes, I would think about that down the line. First, register your LLC. It's also, too, the Guide to Starting a Business in Minnesota has some great chapters on trademarks, which would be good to read as well.
I saw that in the lobby.
Yes.
So I should pick that up.
It's a great resource. And also thinking about registering a domain name.
Oh.
That's also very important because those get kind of taken very quickly. So if it's available, I would register it on GoDaddy.com or Moniker.com. And it's relatively inexpensive.
I've seen GoDaddy's commercials.
Good commercials, yeah, like right? And they're approximately... It's
always tasteful.
Exactly. Always in good taste.
Yes, and it's about $10 a year to maintain the domain's name. So.
Okay. No, I didn't even think about the domain name. That's great advice. Thank you. So what else should I be concerned about to stay out of trouble with this business?
I would also suggest talking to an insurance broker, and they can give you advice on what type of insurance to get for that other businesses have that are similar to yours. And also, too, another thing in the book is in the back, they have a section on licenses, so it would be good to talk to agencies about what type of licenses are necessary for the health industry, for the home health service.
And one thing that you may also want to confirm when you are looking into the license issue is that you may be considered a professional firm under Minnesota, and I'm not 100% certain, but some of the medical areas have an extra registration that needs to occur. So after you file with the Secretary of State's office, you may have to do a separate notice to the licensing board. And as part of your articles, you may also have to say that I want to be treated under the Professional Firm Act. But that's something you can check with the licensing board, and they should be able to help you with that.
Great. Oh, that's great advice. Thanks. You know, one other thing before we finish up, I also thought that I should have a contract with my clients, so I happened to print this off of the internet as a form of client for my type of business. Could you look at it and make sure that it's okay?
Unfortunately, our 30 minutes is almost up. You're always welcome to come back to our free brief advice clinics, and if you can come back with specific questions pertaining to your contract, that would be great. We'd love to hear them. Okay,
great. Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really feel a lot better about lawyers now. So great to meet you both.
Great meeting you
too.
too.
Very much.
Best of luck with your
Good
company.
luck, and always feel free to come back.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a couple minutes before the break, and I wanted to find out if people had comments or questions that came up because of that. One thing I'll mention at the end, and I was having this debate with Mike Vitt about whether we should be telling people, feel free to come back. And it's sort of a judgment call. We don't want people to come every week to the clinic and use up a time slot, but that's never been a problem before. So I think it's fine, without encouraging it too much, to say, yeah, if we're out of time, you can always come back and get another slot. But if it's something like review of a whole contract, then I would say they probably need, there's some resources they can look at, but they probably need full representation if they meet the income guidelines.
You want to make a judgment call. We don't want to press it too much because we don't want people to be abusive of it. They are free to come back. But we want to strongly discourage this notion that some clients get, that if they string together all of these 30-minute sessions, it adds up to full representation, which it never can. And a lot of folks really don't understand that. They have no experience with legal representation, and they sort of think they can piece it together like a necklace or something. So,
great. Any other questions before we break? Yes.
I just have a comment. Justina, I think for most of the people that I work with who start small businesses, your dialogue about the trademarking and the use of USPTO would just be right over their heads. So just we were cautioned about that before, but I worked with one Somalian immigrant to help write his business plan. I mean, he didn't even get that concept. So anything beyond that, like domain name and stuff, it's just one of those things that, depending on the audience.
It depends on the audience, I think, a lot. And I think the comment probably came through, but it was about some of the more detailed trademark advice and domain name advice might be, depending on the client, just over their heads. Although some are have sophisticated questions about it.
So you always tailor your advice to how sophisticated the client is. The other thing to try to take away from this, too, is that you don't need to know the answer to every single question. So when I provided the advice about the professional firm issue, I'm not an expert in that field. I know that that act exists. It at least gives the person a heads up to double check the licensing agency.
But I've had people come in with a long list on a legal pad of questions they've gotten from their relatives who are lawyers or their CPAs or whatever, just doing tons of reading online, so it can be very detailed. But I do think it's a great thing to leave clients with, that I've had some people where I was surprised that they thought that if the Secretary of State gives you you reserve the name or you have it on your LLC, that you're home free from every point of view, and at least making them sensitive that there are trademark issues too is good. A question over here?
I was just wondering, is there any focus or should there be any emphasis on kind of finding out the background of the person and what they've been doing in terms of, non-competition agreements, stuff like that could become problems?
So the question is about finding out about the background of the person to try to spot issues like maybe non-compete issues, and certainly that comes out sometimes.
That's a great observation, especially when Marty said that he just been laid off from a job. That, great point. You'll trigger those issues. You can raise them. Oftentimes, I have had one LegalCORP client that has been subject to a non-compete. So then you're in a little bit of a tricky area because they still want to go ahead and open their business, they understand that's out there. And so how I view my role as the attorney is just to let them know what that risk is, not tell them they can or they can't do something unless it's absolutely illegal.
But the balance is to try to find out about the person without taking up all the time. And, it's just a judgment call. Another question? Yes, sir.
The assumed name. It adds to the confusion. On the Secretary of State's website, it is referred to as an entity. So it'll say entity, assumed name.
Okay, yeah, so we're talking about assumed name, and the Secretary of State materials make it really confusing, and even will say this is an entity, but it's not. And I departed from the script. I was supposed to say, maybe I should just be a DBA. And people think DBA is one of the business entities like an LLC, where it's really just an assumed name, and it's you, so you don't have that corporate veil. Okay, why don't we go to a break, and we'll pick up again at 10:45 with more legal basics. Thank you.